Well, hello, welcome once again to Pale Blooms and Beyond. Thank you for joining us today. Ray Graffia Jr. is an American singer-songwriter who fronted the late 60s Chicago pop rock band New Colony Six. In 1964, the original members were Ray, Gerry Van Kollenburg, guitar, the Kemp cousins, Craig on organ and Wally on bass, Pat McBride harmonica, and Chic James on drums. In 1966, Ronnie Rice, vocals, guitar, and keyboards would replace Craig Kemp. There were many other lineup changes to come over the years. The group started out as a garage band, launching the Chicago rock revolution. The late 60s would find the band settling into a more mellow sound with soft ballads. From 1966 to 1971, the band was at its peak in popularity with 10 singles in the Hot 100. In 1988, the band played a reunion show in Chicago and have been playing together ever since. I must be making my rounds in Chicago, as not long ago I visited with Curtis Bachman of the Buckinghams, and more recently with Tom Doody of the Cryan Shames. Well, welcome, Ray.
Hi, how are you?
Thank you for doing this and taking time out to meet with me and share with us today. Well, take us back to the beginning. Where were you born?
Well, I'll tell you what, as far as you're going to go back to the beginning, Chic James was really James Leonard Chitkowski.
Oh, okay. I'm glad he shortened that name. That's hard to pronounce.
Anybody who watches this and says, "Oh, I'd like to get in touch with Chic," you're not going to find him on Facebook, and you're not going to. Well, you'll find him on Facebook. You won't find him under Chic James.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good to know. That is good to know. Well, where were you born?
I was born, as the song went, I was born in Chicago. Unfortunately, it was not 1941, but it was 1946. Close enough.
Close enough. You have fond memories of your childhood?
Yeah. My mom was actually in a girls group, and that was before television. So they had appeared on radio. And so anytime the Graffias and my mom's side, which was the Wheezies, so I'm Italian German, anytime there was one of those things, especially after those who imbibed got the beer flowing, it was just singing the rest of the time. So I grew up doing singing with my mom and dad. Later, I had two sisters and a brother. And we did all sorts of musical things. And then when the band started, we would rehearse in Chick's parents' basement, Walt's parents' house, my basement, etc. And early on, we decided that we were going to be superstars, and the only way you could be superstars is to get a recording contract. And there were very few people that were doing record labels in Chicago other than Mercury. And they did.
Well, talk about before that. Talk about your musical influences, around that time.
Everly Brothers, Elvis, all the black artists at that time. So I mean, I had a bunch of 78s, which was funny because I just had my 78th birthday a few months ago. And so I just told everybody, they said, "How old are you?" I said, "Remember the big records? And if you don't, I'm not telling you." So,
that's right. That's good. That's good.
Yeah, so I had those. And then, of course, once British Invasion hit, the Beatles were a tremendous influence, Rolling Stones, and all of the British acts.
Oh, that's for sure. Oh, definitely. Definitely that.
Beach Boys, too. I should mention the Beach Boys. Big fan of the Beach Boys.
Oh, okay. Their harmonies. Yes. Yes. Well, can you remember did you go to concerts back then? Do you remember one of the first concerts or shows you went to?
Television. Our family did okay. We had our own home. But it's not like as though there was money to spread around. So if I would go to a show, it would be a freebie someplace in the area. I don't remember attending any, realistically, I don't think. And until we started to play, and then we got to meet and play with the guys that were really cool. But remind me when we get around to it to tell you about some of our Beach Boys tours.
Oh, okay, for sure.
Great fun.
All right. Well, you said what, you're one half German. I'm one half German too.
Voila.
So, yeah.
That was
There you go.
French.
That was French.
I should have said Gesundheit, but you didn't sneeze.
That's right. That's good. That's good. Well, how about who was the very first band that you were in? Was there one before New Colony Six?
Yes and no. What do I mean by that? How did New Colony Six get started?
Uh-huh.
We got started, 5 of the founders and a sophomore were all at St. Pat's High School. And St. Patrick was all boys. And their final concerts of the year, I was in chorus. Wally, now Walt, was in chorus. Gerry and Chic were in the dance band. And Pat that year was the lead voice to introduce what was about to come on to the stage. And so what the Christian brother said was, I got a real great surprise for you guys. Now, this is before the girls are joining us to prepare. And he says, we're going to lip sync a Beatles song. And everybody goes, yeah. And Walt and I, because we stood next to each other, we were both first tenors and we were the tallest guys. So we stood next to each other. I look at him and he looks at me and we both go, this is really lame. We gotta do something better than this.
Yeah.
So because Pat and I were grammar school buddies and he was emceeing, the 3 of us went to Chic and Gerry because Walt knew both of them and said, hey, can we put together a song and do this thing live? And so the couple of rehearsals that we had before the girls came, Walt and I just kept saying, no. So the Christian brother finally said, all right, I'll give you a shot. The second to last rehearsal, when the girls are there, I'll have you do this. And if it goes over, I'll consider it. So we did I Want to Hold Your Hand live. The girls are screaming.
I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they may very well have been making fun of us. But the Christian brother heard it and said, this is where we're going to go. I'm getting goosebumps telling you the story. So anyway, so we did the concert. And at the end of the concert, the main, the head honchos of the girls came up to us and said, Pat and I, and said, would you guys please come and do that song for us at our first sock hop next year? Sock hop, for those of you who are too young, were the dances that we called when I was a kid. And in any case, we look at each other and go, wait a minute, this is girls approaching us? Of course we will. Then between us, after they had left, and little squeals and stuff like that, they had left. I said, well, we got to put together a band. So we had the 5 of us, and there was a sophomore who was playing accordion in the band, but he also played keyboards. So the sophomore then joined us, and we did a couple of parties over that summer as the Patsmen, named after St. Patrick High School.
All right.
After that, we were sitting there and saying, this is really lame. Now, there's 2 versions of how we came up with 26. You want to hear them both?
Yeah, sure.
Or you want to hear the real one from me? Walt swears, any of you who are old enough might remember a root beer called Old Colony. And there was an Old Colony bottle, he swears, that was there. And so when we were debating on how to get away from the Patsman, he said we took Old Colony, and because there were 6 of us, let us call it the New Colony 6.
Okay.
My theory, and this is one I have said from day one, is get back at the Brits. There is nothing being played by American bands on radio anymore. Let's stick it to them. What does England call America? The colonies. So we'll be the New Colony 6.
Right.
So whichever way you want to go, that's how we came about calling ourselves that.
Okay.
So I don't even know what question you asked anymore, but there's my answer.
No, but that was going to be one of my next questions, though, for
Yeah,
sure. Well, we'll talk about the members. Were you guys into the same kind of music? What kind of influences did the members have?
yeah. Walt was our second best guitar player, and we didn't have anybody to play bass. So Gerry therefore took over guitar, and
Yeah.
Walt moves to bass. And Chris, whose dad forced him to quit because we were 2 years older than he was, when he quit, Walt had a cousin who played accordion but had a keyboard. So Craig, then Gregory Kempinski, wound up joining the band as Craig Kemp, and he was our keyboard player. So that's how we got started, and we really honed our chops. We had found a 4 a.m. bar, and despite the fact that we were underage, we could play as long as we stayed in the area where the band was supposed to be. And we did, because some Catholic boys, some of them may have. I've never had an alcoholic beverage in my life other than sacramental wine. And so, or drugs for that matter. So anyway, we would stay there. And if the place was empty, we had to play a full set. And so we got really good, really tight. And as we were doing these things, of course, we still had to rehearse. And Pat would say, hey, I've got this idea. And I would say, hey, I've got these lyrics. And Walt and Gerry would say, listen to this music. And pretty soon we're writing.
Uh-huh.
And so, for example, I Confess is actually 3 songs.
Uh,
Each of the 3 songs were mediocre. So we took what we thought were the best parts of 3 songs, and that became I Confess. So the next time you listen to it, see if you can pick out where they are. I'm not going to tell you.
the 3 songs.
Yeah, so
That's
that's
a
how we
case of
started.
it being greater than the parts,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
whole
no
song.
question about it.
So
So, I think that's the way New Colony 6 was as well.
yeah,
Were we virtuosos any aspect? I don't think so.
yeah.
Chick was a drum and bugle corps drummer, so he was outstanding. Gerry, I mean, everybody was really, really good.
Mhm.
But when you put us together, it was like magic.
Right.
So at that point now, we're starting to think, okay, we play this 4 a.m. bars. We're getting these parties. We're getting a little date here. We're getting a little date there. We're never going to make it here in Chicago since nobody wants to give us a record label.
Right.
Let's go to California. So we had the 6 of us. And then we had a guy who was acting as our manager, who was another classmate. And he had a buddy that was younger, but he didn't mind hauling gear. So the 6 of us and the 2 guys, at that point, we had enough money to fly to California. We did not fly back, so that tells you how well the trip was. But we flew to California, rented a truck, and it was at that point we began something we turned into calling truck surfing. So what would be, you had no more room for the now 8 of us than 4, possibly 5 in the cab. So the other 3 to 4 would stand amongst the instrument and have to truck surf while the driver is trying to mildly swerve, not enough to throw us off, but to have us flip down in the truck. So in any case, so now we're going down the road, and we said, well, we got to go somewhere near Hollywood. Okay, let's go to Hollywood. So we're riding down the road, and we see this motel place, and it looks like it has freestanding places, and it was called the Hollywood Sunset Strip Motel. So we figured, let's pull in and let's see what we can do. So 8 of us get in. We said, no, not everybody can go in there. They'll never rent to us. Long story short, we wound up renting. They had a 2-flat because we could not fit in the little places that they had set up for smaller families. So they said, well, we do have this 2-flat, and there's another band in the other flat. Oh, great, that'll be great. So we took the 2-flat. So we were on 1 floor, and the other band was in the other floor. So we get down and we're talking to each other, hanging around, longish hair and so on and so forth, just in bathing suits and street clothes. So Colony had an audition, and the place we went to was so tiny that there was no room for us to change back. We got there early enough so we could change even in the main room, and nobody would care because there wasn't anybody there yet. So we would change in, but when we were done, they said, well, you got to stay in your uniforms. You change back at your hotel. Okay, we will. So here we are. Now we're riding down the highway, truck surfing on the back, in our red jackets, our white pants, our black high boots. And here we are going down the road. So we pull into the Hollywood Sunset Strip Motel, and there comes the other band for the first time walking out in their outfits, red jackets, white pants, black high boots, and three-corner hats. It was Paul Revere and the Raiders.
Yeah.
Now, can we fast forward 50 years and then we can go back?
Sure.
The very last concert, as it turned out, that Paul was allowed to play, he was the only original Paul Revere and the Raiders guy, but was at the Arcada Theater. Guess who opened? We did.
You did.
I said to the guys, we're not wearing red, white, and black. We're going all black. We did. So Paul Revere and his guys came later. So we were already on stage before I got a chance to see them. So we finish before they're going to go on intermission, blah, blah, blah. So I knock on Paul's door and he opens it up, all black.
Oh, he was stripped that way.
We look at each other and say, you stole our outfits again. So I've got a picture of that, but unfortunately I can't show it to you at this point because obviously we're on live. But in any case,
I think there was a spy in the camp somewhere.
So anyway, we both had a laugh, and as it turned out, the picture I have, I cropped because Paul had his one arm in a sling, and I stuck around to hear them play, and they were wonderful as usual, but you could tell he was really struggling. Turns out that was the last performance, I've been told, that he was allowed to play. So that was the end of Paul Revere and the Raiders. So we started together, and while we're still going, sort of, they've ended.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting story. Well, now go back to the original story. You're out in LA.
Yeah. So we're in LA. We're a failure. We cannot afford to take an airplane back. Yeah. So we get on a Greyhound. All the stuff is shoved underneath the Greyhound bus. And we're riding all the way back across the United States to get back to Chicago. Yeah. Get back to Chicago. We'd been writing stuff on and off and rehearsing in parents' garages and basements. So when we rehearsed at my dad's place, this one particular day, the parents were not allowed anywhere near, but my dad, being my dad, he goes to the basement door, opens it up. Ray, this is where you take a break in between songs. Ray, what was that you just played? Well, that's one of the songs we wrote when it was in California. Oh, that's great. Click, closes the door. Comes back 3-4 songs later when he said the same thing. The fourth time, he says, why didn't you get a recording contract? We couldn't find anybody that would hire us. Yeah. And then there's nobody in Chicago. I'm starting a record label. He did.
He did. Yes.
He knew nothing about the recording industry. Our next door neighbor was an attorney, so he had some ability to guide.
Yeah.
My dad, being a salesman, was able to get enough of the other parents and friends to throw in the money, and he founded CENTAUR.
Yeah, right. Well, one last reference to Paul Revere.
Yeah.
Weren't you passed over to appear on the TV show Where the Action Is?
Yeah.
Okay. By none other than
the clerk. And bypassed by Paul Revere. But
Uh-huh.
that was okay. I mean, they were a great band, and they
Yeah.
they were far more worthy of it at the time than
Yeah.
we were.
Yeah.
I think the
Well,
only thing they had out was, whose cover did they do for that first record? Was it
uh,
Latin Loopy Loo, or was it they
trying to think.
covered some song,
Yeah,
whatever it
it
was.
was a cover. Yeah, it was. It was.
Yeah, so
Well,
whatever it was. In
yeah.
any case, I don't.
Well,
Uh, Good for them.
well, it's good. I want to say too, it was good that your dad supported you
Yeah,
and that he heard what he liked
yeah,
in your band, because so many parents back then, have always been discouraging, say like, why don't you get a real career, and that kind of stuff. So yeah, so that was good.
yeah. He believed in his son,
Yeah,
and fortunately, I was that son.
yeah,
So he helped me then. And because he was a business guy, I
yeah,
studied a lot of what he did. So when it came time for me to take a respite, I had always had this idea about, I'm a hippie tree hugger.
yeah,
So New Colony Six satisfied the hippie.
yeah,
Tree hugger, I've been strong for the environment forever. So I decided I'm going to start a company that does pollution prevention and wastewater treatment. So I did.
yes.
That I led for 40 years,
Ooh,
and we sold that in 2022, which put me into forced retirement. So there's not much music going on, and all of a sudden I don't have any place to go day by day. And it's
crazy.
tremendously depressing. And
Yes.
at that time, I think it was 76, nobody,
Yeah.
I had the best resume you could possibly imagine.
Yeah.
Didn't matter. They
Yeah.
look at it and say, oh man, he's what?
Yeah.
Throw it away.
Yeah.
So I put out no less than 1,700 resumes and applications. Never heard back from anybody but one outfit
Uh,
that I figured was a scam, and it turns out they were. How did I know? They said in a foreign dialect, which I won't replicate, so I don't have anybody get excited,
yeah.
that I should go out to this computer store, and they're going to send me a list of
Uh,
all the stuff that I should buy,
that's a
and
scam.
ship it to them, and then
Yeah.
they'll pay me back.
Oh yeah.
It's
Big
it's
scam. Big scam.
yeah, scam.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Big.
in any
Big.
case,
Yeah.
yeah, then later on, I don't won't get into that because we're staying with New Colony Six, but I
Yeah.
went back to
Well,
teaching 'cause in one of my off times I had taught middle school. So
yeah.
uh,
I do want to talk some about that too.
sure,
But go back to your your dad helping and the other parents too
right,
start the label, and
yeah,
then you remember what it felt like the first time being in an actual recording studio.
absolutely amazing. I mean, talk about terrified. But Ron Mellow
Yeah.
was at the board, and he understood newbie artists.
Yeah.
And he says,
Yeah.
okay, now here's what's going to happen. And yeah, you can play that Hammond B3. That's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so he took us through things, and he was tremendously instrumental in getting us going. And of course, once we got the comfort level with the keys and we had our own guitars, and of course, how hard is it to bang my own tambourine and maracas and stuff? And you get accustomed to how close you have to be to the multi-million-dollar microphones.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you start doing a demo, and then you play it back and you go, oh my God, this is
That's me.
great.
That's me. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the comfort level builds.
Yeah.
And just a coincidental story, we did much of our early recordings in the same studios where the Rolling Stones were. They're 2120 South Michigan Avenue.
Yes.
It's the location.
That's the one.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. Okay. Well, that first album, talking about the organ on
right.
that, I like the sound of that kind of grinding,
Yeah,
that sound that comes through on so many of the tracks on there.
yeah.
Uh, Two of my favorites are I and You, and the time of the year is sunset. That's a really pretty song.
Thank you. That's one of my Bob Dylan wannabe songs.
Oh, okay. I can
Uh,
hear that. I can
yeah,
hear that. Yeah.
yeah. That
Well,
those were 100% my lyrics. And
Okay. Well,
yeah,
thankfully, your voice is a whole lot better than Bob's. So,
I wish it was a whole lot better than it sounds today, but you know what are you gonna do? Well, thank you. Yeah, I
well,
appreciate that. That is possibly my favorite of that and Love You So Much.
oh yes, yes, great track. Well,
Thank you.
and that was on Centaur,
Mhm.
that label. Then Cameo Parkway Records took over what for the second album. Um, they
Well,
still issued it on
colonization
Centaur.
was
Yeah, they still issued it on. I think they changed the name to Sentaur or something like that.
yeah. What
Yeah,
happened was
yeah.
somebody sued my dad because they were
Uh,
using Centaur.
okay,
So he changed it to Sentaur.
okay.
Started again. You'll find a couple of recording labels on a 45 where it is Sentaur. They
Okay.
sued him again. But
Oh,
then they said, okay, if you get rid of the U, Sentar, we won't sue you.
okay.
So after that, it became Centaur as opposed to Centaur.
Okay. Yeah. Whatever works, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Whatever won't get you sued, yeah.
yeah,
But then enter Mercury Records.
yes.
Do you remember how you were signed to that label?
They wanted us. And incidentally, by about that time was when Ronnie Rice, who became a tremendous resource within our band, started hanging around. And he was a solo artist and good friends with Dick Biondi, who at
Okay.
one point he had knocked on. Dick Biondi's a superstar, now deceased, relic of 60s radio. And he took a liking to Ronnie. So knowing that Ronnie knew Dick, and of course, who else are going to want to suck up to more so than the radio DJs? And when we heard Ronnie singing, we said, this is a really good guy. And then
Yeah.
he wrote material. This is good. Unfortunately, he was supposed to replace our keyboard player because he
Oh.
told us he played keys and he
Uh-huh.
played keys like this. But when he joined us, he was good on guitar, so he could become rhythm, and a marvelous voice and a tremendous writer. So we said, okay, we'll keep you.
Yeah.
But at that point, despite the fact that we never changed the name, we
Uh-huh.
carried 7 of us from there on. So we had, after Craig Kemp left, which was our original 7th guy, then when he left, we wound up adding Chuck Jobs, who was an amazing talent and tremendous in terms of putting, okay, yeah, I know this sounds great with the guitars and what, but let's watch this. Let me add this. And here's what I hear for brass and strings. Brilliant artist, just retired, was doing a solo act down in Naples,
Yeah.
in
Yeah. Okay.
Florida,
Okay.
and just brilliant. So in any case,
Well, you mentioned that the disc jockey. Back then, they were like rock stars.
oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Dick Clark, and then a little bit later, Casey Kasem. What was the one in Wolfman? Wolfman a little bit
Oh
later.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. They were like stars.
Yeah, and of
So,
course we had a half a dozen of them that were superstars in the Chicago area because
oh
rock was just going berserk. And
yeah,
because they were 50,000 watts, they were all
uh,
over the Midwest. So, I mean, it wasn't the New Colony Six, it was Dick Biondi presents the New Colony Six.
right, right.
New Jack with
Yeah.
the New Colony Six.
Their name first. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
oh yeah,
right.
yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Which is fine as long as we got to do the gigs. Because I
There you
mean, we got all the girls, and they got all the checks.
There you go. There you go. Well, in any of the live shows were the girls so loud you couldn't hear yourself play like the Beatles?
In the early on days in the clubs,
Uh-huh.
because we were elevated,
Yeah.
not as much as in the later days when we got into the major venues. At that point, it was you're looking at each other and doing, and you just hoped for the best.
Yeah, lip syncing like.
Yeah, no, never lip sync, never lip sync.
Don't
Always
lip
been
sync.
live. We sucked or not is a whole together another story. Yeah, we were always doing them live.
Okay. Well, you can tell that if you want to.
Well, yeah, I mean, there were occasions where before we recognized what drop tuning was, which of course has been the salvation of all of the bands at our age nowadays, where you're playing the same chords, but you've tuned your instruments so that you're down a half step or a full step. So to your mind, you're hearing it exactly the way you sang it for the record, but then you listen to that and you listen to the record and you go, something's different here. Oh, drop tuning. But it's salvatory. I mean, it's an amazing thing because your mind is telling you you're doing exactly the same thing. But because everything has been tuned a bit lower, notes that you were stretching for, you're suddenly hitting. Ones that you might have had to almost go to falsetto are in your natural voice.
Oh, got you.
So
Okay.
That's one of the interesting phenomena. So those are the concerts. If you listen to something and then you listen to it on your audio, you go, wait a minute, something's different here. That's what they did. Drop tune.
Drop tuning. Okay. Yeah, I just talked to a guy this morning and he talks about playing live, how they were like, they sped everything up. They played faster live than on the record.
Now that's one of the kickers that they have to rely on me. I'll give you one example. The record of I Love You So Much is 1:59 seconds.
Yeah.
I can get it most times, but if they take it to 2:06 to 2:12, dead on the money. So every time we do a Cornerstone show, because the Ides of March typically provide the instrumentation for the colony, Mike Borch, their wonderful drummer, is always ready to count it off, and I always go to Mike. Extra 6 seconds. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. So then he drops down that initial pace, and it works out perfectly. Because you know, the older you get, the harder it is to get the words out at the speed you did when you were 18, 19, 20 years old.
Right, exactly. And sound the same and everything. Yeah, everything comes
drop
together.
Tuning and slightly slower. Always
slightly. It works. Those are some helpful hints there. Well, in 1968, the band had its two biggest hits. First, I Will Always Think About You. And I can remember hearing that one for the first time years ago. And it's like, wow, it just struck me right away. I said, this is a wonderful track. One of my all-time favorite pop melodies, especially from the late 60s, especially that period.
Thank you.
Great harmonies.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes.
What was the other? Because if you're going to tell me the other, I think you're going to tell me.
Okay. See if you can.
Great story to tell you about that one.
Okay. All right. The other one is Things I'd Like to Say.
Okay. Bingo.
Bingo.
You want the story?
It did almost as well on the charts. I'll always think about you. In fact, on some charts, it did better.
Yeah.
So
here's the story. Would you like to know that Things I'd Like to Say was the B-side of Come and Give Your Love to Me?
Was it really? Okay.
Yeah.
No, I did
Come
not
and
know.
Give Your Love to Me was released in the Midwest. And I have a chart from KLEM in Iowa. And I didn't have access to a million charts, but I had one where Come and Give Your Love to Me was number 8. The previous week, it had been number 15. The next week, it dropped to number 22. So the question is, where was it in between? I'll never know. So how in the heck What happened to Come and Give Your Love to Me?
Right.
Larry Lujack, Super Jock, as they called him in the day, comes on the tour bus and he had one of these voices. So he commanded respect. So he comes on after the show and he says, guys, you're pushing the wrong side of this record. What? Larry Lujack thinks Come and Give Your Love to Me is the wrong side of the record? Shoot, at that point, I don't even know that I could remember what the B-side was. He says, you got to play Things I'd Like to Say. Larry Lujack says it. We bring it to the record company. We bring it to the parental units.
Yeah.
Larry Lujack says we got to flip the record. Yeah. If Larry Lujack says we got to flip the record, we flip the record. Things I'd Like to Say became the biggest hit we ever had.
Yes. You know, it's great there were DJs like that would flip it over and play the B-side. Yeah. Because I prefer, in a lot of bands, I prefer the B-sides. You know, and a lot of times that's the one that the band likes. It's like the label is pushing the A side. You know, they think, you know, this is going to be the hit. This is the hit. Of course, or it wouldn't be an A side. But I'm so glad throughout, you know, the history that there were DJs that flipped it over and played the B, because there's a lot of great tracks. There were B sides. A lot of great tracks like this one.
I agree with you.
I like the strings on Things I'd Like to Say.
Oh, wonderful.
They are.
I believe Chuck did most of the arranging on that.
Yeah. That's another quality top track. Well, from the album Revelations, the track, well, there's a couple of tracks here that I really like. Summertime's Another Name for Love. Well, we're in summertime right now, so.
Yeah, appropriate. Schoolboy's Fancy turns from thoughts of dictionaries to the thoughts of mellow chicks. They sigh, etc.
Yeah. Really, it's got that summery vibe too. You know, of course. And then Can't You See Me Cry?
There's a story behind that.
Okay.
That's and I can speak to that directly since that was a solo Graffia lyric. I was probably somewhere between 10 and 13, maybe 11 or 12, something like that. Still living with my parents, obviously. And we lived at 3339 North Oleander, Chicago, Illinois. So anybody who wants to Google search to see my original house of origination, that's where I lived. Interestingly enough, the people that own the house now have found me, and so they've been in touch, and so they were excited to know that this is where New Colony 6 started. So anyway, so I'm living there, and I look down the block. We were in the middle of the block, and I see a driving up a big truck, about 7 or 8 houses on the opposite side of the street. And, new people moving in. I wonder if it's a boy. So I go scrambling down there, and what do I see? A little girl. And they're all speaking. Blah, 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 blah. I'm going, what the heck is that? Turns out it's Polish. However, at one point, I kind of waved, and the family waved back. The little girl didn't give me the finger or anything, but she didn't give me anything to be encouraged by it. But I figured, well, I got to check this out. She looks really cute. So I would go over, and at that point, I was allowed to cross the street. So I would cross the street. And she was nice to me, but just had no interest. And I really wanted to get to know her. So, and this is a true story. In Chicago, if you take my right hand and say, this is the street, and this is where the houses were, behind the houses was what we called an alley. And the alley was where you had your garbage cans and the entries to the garages that were typically in the back of the house. So I literally would go stand by their garbage cans and watch their windows in the hopes of catching a glimpse of her.
Oh, okay.
Choking myself up. Years later, it occurs to me, that's a song lyric. And when I spend my hours looking at your window, And when I see you pass by, I begin to feel you near me. Still, I know that you won't hear me.
Yeah.
Won't you love me? Don't you need me? Can't you see me crying? Etc.
And that's where it originated.
That's where it originated. Yeah.
Well, one thing we didn't talk about, and this is a good segue into that, is live shows and talking about some of the with the Beach Boys.
Yeah. So at one point, we were given the opportunity to do a tour with the Beach Boys, and it got to be during rehearsals and stuff. There seemed to be a connection between Carl and some of us. So, because every time they toured, they would rent a bus. It would be a standard bus, and they had a driver. Well, we had wasted a whole bunch of money, bought a double-deck scenic cruiser Greyhound, remodeled it, had sleeping places, did it up on the inside. So every time we toured, Dennis Wilson would come over with some beverages, and he would go sit in the back. He usually brought one or two of the guys that were touring with him, not one of the regular Beach Boys, like one of the roadies or something, friends of his. So he would go monopolize the back and have a few beverages. Carl would bring over an acoustic, and Carl would sit down, and we would all sit around Carl, and he would go ring, and somebody would say, "That's this song," and we would start singing until we didn't know the lyrics or Carl didn't know the chords, and then we would all laugh, and he'd say, "Yeah, but it's also this one." Ring, and then somebody would say, "Yeah, that," and then we had, if I say the name Chet Kopic, do you know that name? He was a superstar sportscaster in Chicago.
What's the last name? What's the last name again?
Kopick.
No.
Okay, well, anyway, he did really well as a broadcaster. He, Pat, and I, and Ronnie all went to the same college. Okay. And so when we needed a roadie, he was about 6'6", big guy, strong guy. So he would drive the bus. So Chet's driving the bus down the highway. And as a result, when he got to his superstardom, he's written books about the Chicago Bears, a lot of the Chicago Bears players that have been featured. Chet Kopic, writer. But he and I were buddies. He would come to the concerts, and everybody wants his autograph and all that kind of good stuff. Yeah, so
Dub Bears.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
So where was I going with this? How did I get off on that track?
That's all right. Tangents are welcome.
Yeah.
Wherever your mind takes you, right?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Well,
so that's your touring with Beach Boys.
Yes.
And I don't know if this is true, but I was told about 3-4 years ago by a buddy who was a friend on either Facebook or someplace else. He said, "I just saw Brian Wilson play a concert." I says, "Oh, that's great." And we never got a chance. Brian never toured when we were touring with the Beach Boys. How was the tour? How was the concert? Concert was fabulous. Tell me about it. He says, "You want to know the best part?" I said, "Of course I want to know the best part. You guys were mentioned." I'm getting goosebumps telling this now.
Yeah.
Said, "What? Brian Wilson mentioned New Colony 6? He said, "Yes. They played a chord, and for some reason he focused, I don't know which one of the songs of ours, and he turned to whoever it was that played the chord and said, 'We're going to play a New Colony 6 song?'" And my buddy goes nuts because he's going, "What? How could this be?" And then he told me, and I went nuts, and now I'm going nuts telling you. I don't know if it's true, but it would have been a place somewhere in the Kansas City area. And he said he mentioned New Colony 6.
Wow. Well, it's your story, so you can stick to it. Okay. Right?
Well, it was his story. I'm just
his story. What was it? Somebody said there's my version of it. There's your version of it, and then there's the truth.
A true story.
Right.
Well, I'll tell you what, it made me feel good to hear
Yeah.
it. It
Yeah.
made me feel twice as good just to tell you.
Yeah. Well, it's great that you still have those feelings. I mean, about that. It takes you back. And
Yeah.
you
Oh,
can
yeah.
remember at that time, and it still, like you said, it still gives you goosebumps, you know?
Yeah.
So that's very meaningful, you know. Well, why did you left what in early 1969 you left the band? Why did you leave?
So at this point, the Ronnie had become a dominant player, which he was entitled to be. So it was Pat, Ronnie, and me. And Ronnie would go along my take on this. I'm not saying this is fact. I'm telling you my take. Would go along pretty much with anything Pat wanted to do. He and I were great friends in grammar school, but we were great friends because of the respect we had for our differences of opinion. Pat kind of wanted to take total control of the band. And one of the things at that point that he said was, I'm suing your dad. What? I want us off Centaur. We need to get on a bigger label. I don't know this to be true, but my guess is his parents did not invest.
Oh.
So in any case, I said, oh yeah. And he said, oh yeah. And it was back and forth, no fisticuffs or anything. I said, I'll tell you what, Pat, you go through with that, I quit. He said, I've already got it under progress. I said, I quit. That was the last show I did until 1988.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
And
right.
that came about because Ronnie had come back to me. Ronnie had left also. And the last person carrying the New Colony 6 name for a while was Gerry.
Okay.
But then he finally said, this is going nowhere anymore. But it was all good players, but it wasn't the same. Because, I mean, we were brothers. And
Right.
unfortunately, sometimes brothers squabble, like when Pat and I did. And I said, screw you. And I did not use anything more than screw you because I've never been a swearing guy either. But I said, if that's the case, I quit. So I did. So in any case, it is a band of brothers. That album title was absolutely apropos.
Yeah.
Boy, oh boy, I keep getting things from my kids and from the other colony members. They must be knowing that this is going on. So this
Yeah, right. You know, it's weird. It's eerie how that happens in some of these interviews. It's happened before too.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I don't think I answered your question. So ask it again, and then I'll give it to you.
Why did you leave in
Okay,
69?
so that being the case, I did tell you that story.
Yeah.
And at the initial times, I thought I can deal with this. And then I said, by this time, Craig had left, Chic had left, and now I left. Walt decided very early on he was going to complete his college education and become a teacher. So he left really early. So I knew Chic was still playing. I knew that Greg was still playing. And so I went to them and I said, you want to start a band? We did. So you can hear, in fact, you want to hear an interesting sort of semi-countrified version of I Will Always Think About You?
Yeah.
I'll look up either Graffia Brothers or Junior, because I think it was put out under that name. But before I get to that story, but you got to check it out. So I forget if it was Beatles Girl. Somebody posted it anyway. And it's sort of
Is it on YouTube? Is it on
yeah,
YouTube?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So in any case, so Chic and Craig and I said, yeah, let's start a band. We'll show New Colony 6. And so we did. And we were struggling for a name. And so we settled on the RJM Band, which here's where the egotist in me took into play. Yeah. My first name is Raymond. My middle name is John. My confirmation name is Michael. So we originally this was not my request. This was their request. Let's call ourselves Raymond John Michael. Nobody will know who it is. Okay. But then I felt that, oh man, this is not me. This is us. RJM Band. So you might find it under RJM Band. You might find it under Raymond John Michael.
Okay, Raymond John. Okay, RJM, Raymond John Michael. I will.
If you want to hear almost all of the RJM material, YouTube at one point had posted the entirety of a CD compilation from Gerry Schollenberger, Schollenberger.
Okay.
The utmost knowledgeable person in the world on the New Colony Six. He knows much more about us than I do. So if I have something I don't know or I can't remember, Gerry, tell me this. So Gerry decided he wanted to do a unique CD. Went to the company that put it out, and I don't remember which one it was, but they said, well, you tie in that you have with New Colony Six, can you get access to obscure New Colony Six stuff? Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I don't know that he knew he could do it, but he did.
Okay.
And then Raymond John Michael being three of the founders, which were more New Colony Six founders than there were in New Colony Six. He said, I've got this idea. RJM Band, New Colony Six.
Okay.
Now, coincidentally, they were searching for, what are we going to call this? I had written song lyrics to a blues tune for RJM. And my brother found those lyrics. My brother is an accomplished drummer, guitar player, pokes around on several other instruments. And he goes and he had an 8-track or something, and he starts recording these tracks. And he had my lyrics. And he said, he brought them to me and he says, listen to this, tell me what you think. And I go, holy, that's great. We're gonna put this together. So we wrote the song. I hope I gave him credit, and we called it Sides. And my lyrics were trying to see both sides of things to see what the other side's for. My way was right, but all I used to hear was what I heard before. And he put it into a rock thing. So the title of the CD I'm talking about is Sides, which is perfect.
Sides,
because it's two sides of the New Colony Six players who were in RJM and New Colony Six.
Oh, great. I like that. Yes.
And it used to be that YouTube had the entirety of the album up there.
Oh, okay. Well, there may be should be parts of it, I would think. Yeah. For
sure, you can hear Sides. I mean, that was posted 3 or 4 different places.
Okay, that's there too.
If you do hear Sides, I'm lead vocal. The sole backing vocal is my brother's voice. All of the instruments are my brother.
Oh, okay.
Ron, my brother Ron had several really good bands, but they never got a break.
Yeah. Wow. Well, were you talking about the reunion show in '88? Yeah. Were you surprised by that interest? How did you first hear about it?
So WTTW Channel 11.
Yeah.
Because Jim Peterick, who wrote Eye of the Tiger and was the head guy for Ides of March and still is, he had some contacts there. I was best friends with the head of their maintenance team. So between Peterick and my buddy, my understanding is, now I was not there, so I don't know, is that they came up with the idea of, Chicago had so many great bands. We should do something. And you know what? Let's start a new series, and we'll start it in Chicago.
Okay.
And so therefore, the tour that became the tour that still exists began in Chicago. They decided they'd do this TV show. And so that's how it came to be. And so they booked a studio, and they were going to film this thing, and then added a couple of artists that were not from Chicago and put it out. And when it was first shown during a pledge drive, we then grabbed the all-time most money-raising performance that was ever aired on WTTW. And so from that, the tour came out, and we've been toured Cornerstones of Rock. Cornerstones of Rock American Garage is what they called it.
Okay.
And that was the TV show. And so from that, Jim, when they had said to us that they're going to start in Chicago, and then they're going to move it. They never did. So Jim, who's the wealthiest, I think, maybe with Carl Giammarese from the Buckinghams, I'm not positive of that, somehow or other, they talked with WTTW, and WTTW said, yeah, you want to use Cornerstones of Rock? Go ahead. Whether or not it was pay us and go ahead, I don't know. But I do know that Cornerstones of Rock now has been the name of that tour, and it still tours. I mean, for a while, we were doing like one a month or more. Now we're doing 3 or 4 times a year in and around Chicago and the Midwest, because anytime we do, man, you got the Buckinghams, you got the Ides of March, you got the Cryan Shames, you got the New Colony 6, you had American Breed, you had the Shadows of Night. Oh, we gotta go see this. So we were packing places like it was back in the 60s.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, do you notice at those shows, like some of the old fans, but maybe bringing their kids and their grandkids?
Oh, yeah. That's the fun. I'll tell you what, that's the fun part. Anytime we do a Cornerstone show, at whatever point New Colony 6 is featured, before that, and hopefully I usually remember fast enough to go back and change so that I'm ready to get on the stage. One time I didn't. I went right from the audience. Holy crap! And I ran up the front stairs to the stage. Sorry. I know I should be changed. Everybody laughed. It was great. But in any case, I would go and I'd watch the other acts. We get finished. I'd go back, change out of my stage gear, and I'd go find another seat and I'd watch the rest of the show. It's a fabulous show.
Couple of footnotes. The New Colony 6 was inducted into the Iowa Rock and Roll Music Hall of Fame in 2002, and then 20 years later inducted into the Illinois Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Yeah.
That is correct.
Yeah,
So
and proud moments, right?
Both of them. In 2002, the close to the current band, New Colony 6, was together, and we had done a performance in Rockford, Illinois. And we had hired a small plane and a pilot big enough to take 6 of us, told the people we would bring guitars, but they got to have gear, flew. Now, you remember the song, The Night the Music Died?
Yes.
So we're flying to Iowa, to the Iowa Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And as we're going, we encounter a superstorm. And one of our guys who was tremendously fearful of flying, now passed away, Mark Eskin, he's in a panic mode. So we yell up to the pilot, you gotta go around this. We'll never get to the place in time. You gotta go around this. Long story short, we got there just in time, get off the plane, no change of clothes, jump on the stage, perform our things, get our mementos, and jump back on the plane and head back to Chicago. So that was the 2002 one. And then there was no Hall of Fame in Illinois. So in 2020, they began the work on the Illinois Rock and Roll Museum, which was going to have a Hall of Fame. The initial induction group included 2 guys that were, and I'm not going to say this is why they wound up being inducted first, but 2 guys who were on their staff. I'm not going to mention the band names, but those 2 bands were in first year. I was absolutely crushed because I said, 9 weeks before anybody else got airplay, New Colony 6 broke down the door. How could we not be on the first ballot?
Right. Right.
We weren't. We were
Right.
on the
Yes. Little politics there. Yeah.
Yeah. So in any case, so we were in the following year.
But you did get it.
Yeah, that's both of them were tremendous honors. But yeah, the story accompanying the flight is always a fun one to share. Especially with Mark, I can still picture him panicking in the plane. Yeah, no, we're gonna get killed. We're gonna get killed. And of course, all of us being smart Alex, we start singing.
Yeah, all the song.
Bye,
Yeah.
Miss America.
Man.
So,
You're just egging him on. That's all.
absolutely, absolutely. So anyway, so
Yeah.
both of those were tremendous honors. And I think the cool part about Iowa, which I found out later, is they also have what they call a Wall of Fame.
Okay.
And they have the words Hall of Fame. And above the double L's, it's a picture wall, is the entirety of the New Colony 6 as we were at the time that we were inducted.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So that's really cool. So I have posted.
You have a picture. You have a pictures.
Oh, heck yes, I do. Yeah. In fact, I think pretty sure I posted it on Facebook.
Okay. Okay. I'll have to go back there and check that out. Well, now I read on your Facebook bio that you're a former Catholic deacon.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So I've always been a strong believer in the Roman Catholic faith. I've had my variations in terms of, you think this? Well, I'm not so sure about that. But 98%, 99%. And while I was being trained for diaconate, I spent 15 years as a lay minister with the chief guy of our parish when I was living in Arlington Heights, when we were living in Arlington Heights. And he stunned me one day when he did one of these, put your arm around my shoulder. And he was a little guy, so he had to put his arm around his shoulder like this. He said, Ray, I need to talk to you. And I'm thinking, oh, geez, now what did I do? There's a program called diaconate. You familiar with it? I said, yeah, we've got a deacon here in the parish. And so I said, yeah, what does that got to do with me? He says, I think you're going to be a perfect deacon. What do you mean I'm going to be? And I didn't say that, but I'm thinking, I'm going to be what? So I said, tell me more. And so long story short, it was either 2 or I think it was 3 years of training. And my wife and I had to go together. Theory being, if the wife doesn't go along, then the deacon will never stay with it. So therefore, it has to be a deacon couple. Perfect logic. So we went through the training, and all of a sudden, instead of walking to a concert, I'm walking on the center of Holy Name Cathedral in downtown Chicago. And the cardinal was supposed to be there for ordination, but he was sick. So there was another minister that was there. And I'm going, holy crap. Are you kidding, Lord? Are you kidding? But yeah, so it's 15 years as a lay minister, 15 years as an ordained deacon, and then 13 to 14 years after that ordination, we decided, because I had now subsequently started my real world business, and we were working out of McHenry County.
Okay.
So I told my wife, I said, this is crazy. I mean, this is a long trip every day. Yeah, but I got all my friends here. All the kids know they'll be fine. They'll be fine. Long story short, we moved to McHenry County.
Okay.
So once you're in McHenry County, that's outside the Archdiocese of Chicago. So if I wanted to be a deacon in the Rockford Diocese, there was a 2-stage process. Excardination means I quit Chicago. Incardination means, would you take me, Rockford? Which is a lengthy process. And long story short, I said, this is crazy. I think I think it's time for me to retire.
Okay.
So I left all my vestments, and that was it. Because I was already attending church when I didn't have diaconate duties in Arlington Heights, where our parish was, and I would start attending out here. So yeah, now what I do, because of the fact that there's been some issues here and there, I watch our Chicago Cardinal on YouTube, usually instead of the church.
Uh-huh.
Same mass and same dedication to our Lord as I've always had, but
Okay.
just a different venue. It's more comfortable sitting here and watching the big screen TV than
Right.
going in with all the other people who are looking at the long-haired guy and who the heck is this guy?
So I missed the boat on confessing my sins to you.
Well, what do
I
you
was,
think
I was all,
where do you think I
I was
confess
getting
came from? That's
right.
the
I was getting pumped up about that. I was writing them down.
no. That was not something a deacon could do. It only could be an ordained
Oh, okay.
priest. So,
Oh, okay. Okay.
yeah.
Well, good. Well, I'll just throw those away now. Well, talk a little bit in we're coming down, I think, towards the end of it. Talk a little bit about your teaching and particularly middle school.
Okay. So at this point, took my break from the colony, and we had RJM was going, and because the age at the time was appropriate to have all of the kids in the neighborhood. I still had the hair. They knew I was the rock guy. They all hung around.
Yeah.
So they were like middle schoolers, fifth graders, sixth graders, seventh graders, eighth graders, early high schoolers. And we would play basketball and we formed teams. In fact, if I'd known we were going to do this, I'd have pulled one out.
Oh,
Because I
okay.
still have one.
Uh-huh.
I formed a company
Uh-huh.
where we would go to the families in the neighborhood,
Yeah.
and anything that they needed to be done, we would do for people that are my age now, then.
Uh-huh.
So, this was like 40 years ago.
Wow. Yeah, because I think the picture you showed me of the class was like seventh grade, 1972. I believe it was. Yeah.
Yeah, that could be. And
Yeah.
so anyway, so back to that part
Yeah.
of the story then. So they would hang around.
Yeah.
And one of the kids across the street's mom was really tight with the parish priests. She helped out in the moms clubs and all this stuff. And she goes to Dave and said, Dave, you got to talk to Ray. They're looking for a teacher. And Dave says, I don't know. I mean, he's like sixth grade at this point. So he goes, at this point, I was never Mr. Graffia except for the first couple of seconds that we met. And I said, no, there is no Mr. Graffia. That's my dad. Ray. So he came and says, Ray, my mom wants to talk to you. No, he wouldn't even tell me what it was. So, okay, I go tramping across the street and I meet with her and she says that this is what they're looking for somebody to teach middle school. And I said, well, I have not taught formally, but I certainly have. And yeah, I'll go talk to him. Long story short, I get hired. And so I wind up teaching seventh grade.
Uh-huh.
And I had the hair.
Uh-huh.
And I'll tell you what, these kids were fans, for crying out loud. So I had respect up the kazoo. Let's do music, Mr. Graffia. Let's do music.
Yeah.
There, I had to be Mr. Graffia, or they'd have gotten in trouble. So that was. But in any case, so we had great classes, and one of the things that most of them that I've seen in subsequent years, some of them very recently, was anybody who would mess around. I would have an after school thing. And I called it the musical zoo. Okay. So I assigned them an animal. And then they would be there, and they had to stay for like 20 minutes or 30 minutes, whatever the heck period of time was. And when they weren't doing productive things or they started messing around, I'd say, musical zoo. And then I would start singing something and they had to oink or moo or
Whatever
bow,
the animal's noise.
whatever the animal noise that they had. And here's the really funny thing. Ronnie and I just did a record collectors convention within the last 12 months. And all of a sudden, this really cute girl comes up and I said, boy, she looks familiar. It's one of my 7th graders.
Oh,
and she comes up and
wow.
she starts talking to me and she says, do you remember the musical zoo? And I get this huge smile. And so in any case, I got a picture, 2 pictures of them. I think they're on Facebook. I think one of them, I'm doing this, which was supposed to show her being reprimanded. And the other one is just, a couple of smiles. And so we were just talking about all that stuff. But that, I mean, I still, in fact, yesterday, I talked to Joe Sexton, who was one of the 7th grade students and who has remained a friend of the family all this time later. And he's the one who's now telling me, look, now that you're done teaching for this year, if you're not going to go back to it, go become a custodian at one of the big box stores. I said, why would I do that? He says, I did it. It's great. I love it. I don't know. We'll see what I do. Yeah. So I'm still in contact with several of those people. And
I was going to say, go ahead.
Yeah, the kids in the neighborhood, I just found out one of them that was part of our crew passed away. How did I find out? Joe told me. Okay. So, so it's, it was really fun time.
Yeah, I was going to say, and that's got to be rewarding for you, to hear from them years later, like you said.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And how they've gotten on with their lives and what they're doing now. And that they still talk about you and remember those times.
Yeah, and they have come to concerts.
Yes.
All of a sudden, again, the sister of the boy whose mom was the one who got me to teach there, she was younger. She was always like just cute as a button. Yeah. And all of a sudden this girl comes up. I said, God, that looks just like Dave's sister. It was. So now she's married. She's got her own kids. So she came, and then later, she came up first. And then she says, hold on, I got somebody else who's here. And Dave was here, and Joe has come. It's just tremendous support.
Yes. It's got to be a good feeling.
Yeah, it is. Well, you can tell just by the exuberance on the
with music, making the connection with people, and then with teaching, it's very, very similar, that you're having an impact, in a way on these people, the fans.
Yeah, that's I think one of the best things to me about Facebook. I was very active in Facebook, and then I quit for about 12 years. Yeah. And then when everything started to go down the tubes in terms of everything, I said, I need smiles. I wonder if anybody remembers me at Facebook. So I went back to Facebook. Yeah. Nobody was there. Yeah. I now have, and this is less than 2 years later, maybe 14 months, maybe less than that, 3,030, is it 3,600? I think it's 3,600. Anyway, it's over 3,000 friends. Now, do I know more than 30 of them? Probably not. Have I grown to know more than 300 of them? Probably. Yeah. And so now the fun thing for me is, you're on Facebook, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I just, yesterday or the day before, I had come across a picture that I had and I'd forgotten I had it. And what it is, it's 2 white rabbits in like a snowstorm kind of thing. Okay. And they're just bumping noses. So I then took the final line I wrote for Love You So Much, posted it with the picture, and it has tremendous responses. Yeah. Won't you please remember this? One sweet kiss is all I need to bring to mind our days of fun, all the things we've done. And there's the two bunnies.
With their noses, yeah.
And it just has had tremendous responses.
Yeah. Right. There is that positive upside of Facebook and the internet, there is. And that's what I try to think about that. I try my
I will
my
always
best.
think about that.
Yes. Right. But like in reaching out, I'm happy for people like you that do regularly, go on Facebook,
Right.
or else we wouldn't be doing this.
Right.
But others never hear from them. I don't know if they don't go on Facebook or but that's usually my first point of contact, because people don't publish their emails. You just don't do that for some reason. I don't get no. I'm kidding. But unless they have their own website, that's the best way, because they will answer those more times than not. They'll answer those. But
our Bruce Matty, who has been very formative in the Reformation when we got together in the latest iteration that we are, he had that. So there is a New Colony 6,
right?
I think .com, and
yes,
there's a New Colony 6 presence on Facebook. But mine, I think it's new. I was going to look up here to see it. I don't know what the heck, I can't tell. Anyway, whatever it is, I think it's new.colony.6.ray.graffia. I don't know what all it is. Anyway, if you Google, if you're on there and you look up Ray Graff, you'll find me.
Yeah.
I have a retired police officer who started a band, and he's been a good friend. And so his band is called Ambidextrous. It's a funny story. He was left-handed, and when he was a kid, they weren't making left-handed guitars. So he had to learn to play guitar right-handed. So when he started his band, Ambidextrous.
There you go. Yeah.
So anyway, and he's been a tremendous friend. And that being the case, he has had me, there's a very famous restaurant on the south side called Craples, and they were hired to play at Craples. So he went to the people at Craples and said, "Can you add something to the ad?" And they said, "What do you want to add?" Featuring Ray Graffia, New Colony 6. Okay, the largest crowd in the history of Craples was me with Ambidextrous at Craples.
Wow.
It was so big that the police had to be called because people who weren't allowed in were staying in their parking lot and dancing to the music.
They're out there dancing.
Because they wanted to have other people that could come in as other people were leaving.
Right.
They had no place to park. So
wow. That's an idea to hit some of those locations like that, restaurants and things like
In fact, if you were up local, I am going to be guesting with him again at a place that's. Have you ever heard of the Arcada Theater? That's one of the more famous places.
It does ring a bell. Arcada.
So anyway, it's over in St. Charles, Illinois, and there's a little theater right around the corner from where that is, and they hired Ambidextrous. So Ambidextrous said, "What if I could get Ray Graffia coming from the New Colony 6? And she says, "Yeah, well, let's see how that would go over." So now it is Ambidextrous and I'm doing a guest spot, I don't know, 6 or 7 tunes, something like that. So there is if you are up on Facebook, just look up Ambidextrous and you can see the poster that he did. And it's really cool because he has a picture of me in my Nehru jacket in 1966. And then most recent picture that I had was from 2024, but no, it was 2020, it was this year. So I'm wearing it this year because it still fits.
Yeah.
Which, a lot of my cohorts have changed their appearance dramatically.
Yes.
I'm probably 5 to 10 pounds lighter than I was. prior to the end of my stay with the colony.
Well, Ray, I mean, anything else that you'd like to mention or in closing? I think we've covered quite a bit. It's been very fun. It's very enjoyable. It's been most fun. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, it was for me as well. God willing, I'm not going anywhere. Well, other than maybe leaving this house. But other than that, I'm not going anywhere else.
All right. All right, Ray. Well, all the best to you, okay? And
Peace,
all right. Peace, yes.
blessings,
Peace, yes.
chill.
There you go. I like that. Chill. All right.
Bye.
All right. All right. Bye-bye for now.